let's say someone is 50 years old and at 47, they had no issues. And now at 50, they're having all these problems. What changed?
Even if you eat properly, you can still be mineral deficient because our soil is depleted and water is stripped of minerals because of processing. Now, what minerals are people most deficient in the most?
God. Well, the ones that have so much leverage, or some of the ones we're talking about, but iodine is one we haven't talked about, and that's a huge one. There was a study done, 6,000 people, 96% of 6,000 were deficient. And some of which were to have been taking iodine regularly, prior to the collection. And so the other part of this is really fascinating to me, and this hints at why a great diet, eating well, beyond the soil issue and just the lower level of nutrients, causes it's just not specific enough to reverse a deficiency. So obviously we have to eat some things, but here's something to be aware of, right? And this is why I love precise nutrition, and I realize the importance of absorption and testing regularly. So almonds, right? If you go and you find, oh, well, look, and you're trying to do it yourself, for example, a common trap that someone would fall into would be they would look at foods high in magnesium, and one of those foods would be, say, almonds. And when they do, they'll find that almonds are 6 times higher in calcium than they are in magnesium, but they won't find that out ever, probably. They'll just see that it's listed as a high magnesium food, and they'll eat a bunch of it. Now, if you're like 90% or more of people that we've tested, they are higher in calcium than they are in magnesium, meaning they need less calcium, even if they're not actively consuming calcium. It's so easy to get calcium in the diet comparatively. And they, as I said earlier, they're on a seesaw, a counterbalance between the two of each other. And calcium is the heavier one, right? And so it's pushing magnesium out. And magnesium is just being used for everything, nervous system. If you're stressed, so many different things, ATP, and about 3,700 other things in the body. And so, yeah, it's just, when you think of that lack of specificity, you'd wonder how any of us, I mean, the body is just a wondrous thing that it keeps going at the rate it does.
So most people are deficient in iodine. In fact, it's quite funny because when you look at thyroid hormones themselves and you see how iodines are attached, I think it's 3 iodine to 1 thyroid hormone, and so 3 iodine for T3, T4, 4, and whatnot. And that's how the thyroid hormones are made up. And the thyroid hormones are like the messengers for sending hormones around the body to tell it to do stuff.
Yeah. And then we have magnesium that's directing that TSH signal. That's important. And then we've got selenium that's helping activate, inactive to active, and zinc's playing its role. It's a whole orchestra.
Yeah. And the fact, so like, I mean, if you think about nutrition, we just can take it back for a second. If we look at nutrition as a whole, right, we go, what do we need? We need protein, fats, carbohydrates, minerals. Right, these are the main groups, right? And yet people are saying, oh, what, eat enough protein, or you've got to have good fats, or have some carbs for obvious reasons. But they don't necessarily go have some electrolytes or minerals. You should get it from your food. And then it takes me back to this influencer that thinks she understands the level of stuff that you do, saying you don't need them unless, X, Y, and Z. And I think everyone should actually have these in their diet in some form. And this is why some of the major brands out there are doing so well. I mean, let's be honest, when it's just salt in a packet, and it's not necessarily targeted for what you need, the margin is ridiculous. And, they're huge brands, but they're not necessarily, it's a sweeping statement.
Yeah, it's not getting the micro minerals in there, like unlike a trace minerals product that either we have or some other company has. But again, it's absorption. And trace minerals doesn't necessarily mean small enough to be absorbed.
Exactly. And I think this is the one thing that the word supplement, by definition, is to supplement. So, and I think, so for instance, to go to your point about magnesium, if you're deficient in magnesium, but you have almonds and it's got lots of calcium. Well, it's not necessarily right. You need something to go in there and clear up the mess, and which is the magnesium. And my opinion is that most people are deficient in magnesium.
100%. Potassium as well. 99% of people are deficient in potassium.
Yeah.
And so we could go on and on. I mean, the over 60% of population's deficient in most of the minerals they need, I would say.
And yet if someone heart palpitations, heart palpitations or whatever, they get put on
using potassium. They basically statin it.
Yes, no, the doctors will put you on a beta blocker.
Sure.
Yeah, and they go, oh, how can we master this? Instead of how can we just get this person the right minerals?
Right. That brings up a really interesting question that I'd love anyone to ask themselves. And that is, let's say someone is 50 years old and at 47, they had no issues. They had no issues that they knew of that were causing problems. And now at 50, they're having all these problems. What changed? So I always think, if you're having issues now, what changed? And the answer really is you became deficient in something, probably because of a life traumatic event. Maybe it was a car wreck, maybe it was a relationship, maybe it was a business, maybe it was a lot of good things just all at once. And, the nutrient supply didn't keep up with the output.
One of the things from me being a biohacker is I learn from the best that I can find. I don't care generally about qualifications. It's more about personal experience. But when you get an overlap of personal experience and qualifications where someone really knows their shit, I really listen, and I like to learn from the best. And when someone says to me, well, you're not medically qualified, or you're not qualified, I'm like, yeah, but I learned from this dude here.
Yeah.
And sit and interview them and figure out if I'm wrong in something or other even. And it's great.
Love that.
One of the things that...
Well, there's so much indoctrination in most educational systems today. I think any logical, smart, aware person would agree with that. It's self-evident. It's a self-evident truth.
So you do this test, right? Which obviously we've mentioned about already, but also what I really love is, one thing I hate, I'll start with that, is that when someone says, how can I make money? What can I do to make money? Versus someone that says, here's something missing in the world and I want this. And this is what I'm going to build. So with your test, that's one thing. The other thing is that you've formulated upgraded formulas, which are nanoparticle. I'll let you explain a little bit about that in a minute. Nanoparticle minerals. Now, the reason I think we first started hanging out properly was obviously because of the podcast I heard you, but when I reached out to you via Tara actually, and I said, what should I try? Because I like the sound of these minerals. I'd try the magnesium. Okay, so, and this is the context which is why we're sitting down today. And it's not about plugging a brand. It's not about selling you supplements. It really is telling you, look, how great when you get them right is. I used to go for magnesium IV twice a week because my mercury levels were high. My body couldn't deal with the magnesium properly. Magnesium sulfate IV would work for me. I'd relax. My heart rate variability would go up. My resting heart rate would come down. I would sleep better. It was amazing. And I would do this twice a week, pretty much every single week. I still love the guys in the IVL clinic and I go in for glutathione quite regularly. But what I noticed was when I got your magnesium, I didn't need IV anymore.
Yeah. Nutrition's so good, you don't need IVs. That's us.
and that's a great line. I like that. But the thing is but I had been supplementing with magnesium and it not really worked for me for the most part. It sure does it. If I have a headache in the short term, it's kind of like works, generally supplements. And, as discussed, some of the hydration sachets that I carry around with me when moving around. You're also more, I think, focused on filling deficiencies than just day-to-day tick over, to be honest, which gets you to point, so you don't necessarily need the day-to-day tick over. But the magnesium for me was game-changing. And, I learned to self-IV and do magnesium. And I stopped needing to do that the moment I started using your magnesium. So I knew through own evidence, it wasn't just BS of another brand trying to sell me a product.